Hello, this is Jim Hargrove, Enterprise Restaurant Business Consultant with Shamrock Foods, here to talk to you today about some more of what's actually going on with the new normal in the COVID-19 era within the four walls of our restaurants. And today specifically, I want to talk to you about employee culture in the post-quarantine age. Things have changed out there and our employee pool is changing. So it's important that we stay on top of that. So by way of review, let's just go back and look and see what has gone on with the labor pool over the last couple of decades, and then we'll dive down a little bit deeper into what's gone on in the last couple of months. And on the chart you see in front of you here, the red line along the top, that represents unemployed people actively looking for work. And this goes back to 2002. The blue line underneath is jobs that are open and need to be filled. So in the hospitality industry, and as owner-operators, chefs, and GMs, we're always hopeful that that red line, people looking for work, is higher, and there's more of them than there are open jobs. It makes it easier to keep our restaurants staffed and to control labor. So we see them spike in either direction right around 2008, 2009. This is, of course, the Great Recession. Lots of folks unemployed and lots of jobs went away. And then our economy began to grow, and it grew every single year until just this year when the pandemic hit. But late in 2019 or so, we saw that those two lines converge and flip. So now we got to the point where there were more jobs open and available than there were people looking for them. This makes it very, very difficult for us in the restaurant business. We go from having 4, 6, 8 people trying to fill a job and apply for it down to 1 or none. And we felt this throughout our industry. We also felt the need, because the employee pool was shrinking relative to the number of restaurants that were being added into our country. We felt the need to pay top wages for maybe not top performers, but this is just the situation that we found ourselves in. And then we saw what happened this year. So if you look on the left-hand side of that graph, right about here, that's what we were just looking at a moment ago, that showed where the two relationships switched. There were more jobs open than there were people looking for them. And that stayed the same way for a couple of years, the last couple of years. And we know it's just been really tough out there, and a virtual feeding frenzy for employees. And again, this idea of having to pay top dollar for B-, C+ labor just to keep our places staffed, and in many cases we just couldn't stay staffed. So we look all the way down on this end and we know what happened. It was COVID-19, and we had a pandemic, and we saw a whiplash effect here on unemployment, and spiked very fast as our economies began to shut down. Number of jobs, of course, fell off. There were more and more businesses closed, fewer and fewer jobs available. Now we see that blue line beginning to drop off. And it's going to begin to course correct, and we should start to see that green line improve slower, because many industries are only open at maybe 50% or 25% capacity, so they don't need as many employees yet. So this is kind of where we are, and the tables have turned a little bit for restaurant owner operators. But for the time being, we're finding ourselves with some challenges on getting people back into the workplace, back into our restaurants, and ready to work as we get dining rooms reopened. And this is coming from an area, employees are falling into one of 3 basic categories. There's a lot of employees, hourly employees, that are relying on these robust unemployment benefits afforded to them by the CARES Act. They're content to stay at home and collect those large checks, and they're not ready to come back to work yet. There's another group that's uncomfortable returning to a high face-to-face or mask-to-mask environment, such as a restaurant, out of concern for this virus. Maybe they have kids at home. Maybe they look after an elderly parent. Whatever the case may be, we need to respect that and talk that through. And still others, there's a small minority of others that see the hospitality industry as so deeply damaged that they don't want to wait for it to fully recover. We think it's going to recover faster than that. But again, that's just a piece of the puzzle that is causing, in some cases, people not to come back to work. So as quarantines lift and dining rooms reopen, even if only partial, we've got owner-operators, GMs, and chefs. They're back on the phone with their staff to arrange for returning to work. And what we're learning now is, in this new post-quarantine world, employees have different needs and wants than they did pre-pandemic. It's to be expected. It's a whole new world now, and the needs and wants have changed. Some employees, really good employees, have become so bored at home and stir-crazy that they're anxious to return to work. Well, many others have a, quote unquote, what's in it for me approach to the restaurant employment now. And that's not really necessarily from a place of self-centeredness or selfishness. They just really want to know, hey, this is different now. What's in it for me? So these employees, they're really important to the initial restart of our industry. As the summer progresses, they're looking for three things: safety, communication, and respect. So let's dive into some of those. First one, obvious one, safety. If I'm an hourly employee and I'm returning to work, I want to know, how are you going to keep me safe at work? I've been doing nothing but watch the news for the last three months. I know it can be dangerous out there, so how are you going to keep me safe at work? So as owner-operators and chefs and GMs, we need to make sure that we've got the talking points that we can talk specifically about the physical and cultural changes we've made around our restaurants to keep folks safe. They're designed to keep customers safe, but then therefore they're designed to keep employees safe as well. Let's be prepared to have those difficult conversations with folks coming back to compel them to come back and stick around, especially our best employees. They're also wanting to know, from a safety standpoint, how are you going to support me if customers are behaving unsafely? And we're talking about Diffusing the Extremes, which is another presentation I suggest that you watch, and it helps to make sure that our restaurants are safe for customers and employees. When we do have the rare customer that's not willing to comply with today's new safety standards, they're going to want to know, what is your plan to keep my coworkers from working while they're sick? And so we have temperature screening programs. We have a health questionnaire program. We need to be able to talk about these things in detail with employees to compel them to come back. Then we're going to be inflexible. If someone's running a fever or showing symptoms, they go home and they have to have no symptoms for 3 days minimum before they can come back. We just have to be really inflexible on that. Moving to communication, obviously very important at all times, going back decades, but even more important now. In this new COVID-19 era, we need to have a compelling why for all the safety and sanitation procedures we're going to add. And we're going to do that through training. We're going to train not only our employees, but our customers too. We can't assume that customers know how to use a restaurant during the COVID-19 era. And good-hearted customers might come in and be unsafe and be non-compliant and not really understand. So we need to be able to, with hospitality, teach people how to use restaurants in the COVID-19 era. So training customers is as vital as training employees. So we're going to make it as obvious as we can with signage in the restaurant, knowledge on the website, QR codes. Of course, we're going to train our guest-facing staff really, really closely before we reopen. And as we're bringing more people on, they get really good training on how things work for safety in this day and age. So continuing with communication, we have to make sure that we are willing to be nimble and flexible. We hear about COVID-19 fatigue, and maybe we let our guard down. We have to keep our guard up. Fully 50%, nearly 50% of consumers in our country still aren't ready to return to a dining room. We need to respect that and be nimble and be flexible. But remember, it takes time to figure this out. Really conscientious restaurants are still having a tough time in this day and age with all the new policies in place. And so there's some stumbling that goes along. That's to be expected. Depending on your age, of those of you that are listening to my voice, remember the first time that you flew in an airplane after 9/11. It was a mess. TSA was brand new, and they were figuring it out, and no one really knew what to do. Customers didn't know how to go through that process, and TSA was stumbling along the way. But it got better in the weeks and months and years that came along. It got better and better and better. And while none of us like taking our shoes off and waiting in those lines, you sure do get through those lines most of the time much, much faster than when it first happened. So it takes time. Give yourself time and be nimble. If something is missing and you hear about it from customers or employees, figure out a way to add it. If you've got a policy in place that's not working and you're hearing about it through your open door policy, just be nimble and change it. The thing to remember is just communicate a lot, over communicate in this time. You need to make sure that you communicate your strategy that you're going to have if a guest or employee can't or won't comply with social distancing and mask policies. You're going to practice that. You're going to share it. You're going to role play. It's going to be a major part of your training. I would go so far as to record a video demo of yourself de-escalating a situation for new hires. It's not just a week or two of bringing people back. The COVID-19 virus is not going away tomorrow. It's going to be around for a while. So we're going to be hiring people in the COVID-19 era for weeks and months to come. Let's make sure we have these training tools like videos in place. And then respect. Internally or externally, a lot of employees are thinking or saying, do you appreciate the fact that I'm here and working under these unique, potentially dangerous circumstances? And our response as chefs, GMs, and owner operators has to be, yes, we do understand and we do respect it, and we're going to show it by being hands-on, by being extra engaged and communicative. We have that door open at all times for feedback. We're trying to be proactive and get out ahead of anything that we're hearing about or learning about from our sales rep, from watching the news, things of this nature. And, you know, we've heard the terms, we're in this together, an awful lot. So how do you build a we're in this together culture in your restaurant? I would suggest that you get a handful of employees, maybe 2 back of the house and 2 front of the house, and they get together once a week, socially distant from one another, and they talk about what's going on in the restaurant in terms of safety and communication, and they share that with you. And as an owner-operator, you can respond to that and communicate with that. Again, this helps your best employees stay engaged with you, stay sticky with you as an employer, and sticky with the brand, and they're less likely to move on from you. And so, you know, kind of along those lines, we need to remember that Restaurant 101 is still around. That there have been some wholesale changes to the restaurant industry, but some things are still normal. The 7-step onboarding process, this lowers turnover. It works. So you go through these processes with a strategy and very diligently, and you will see better trainees coming out of training, and you will see your turnover decrease. And we know that it's $3,200 to replace an employee that leaves in our industry. So this really adds up. So let's remember the importance of the onboarding process and where we're looking for our employees. If you're a restaurant that has a stack of paper applications at the front door with a box of golf pencils, you need to cast a wider net. We need to be looking further afield for our employees. And here's just 6 of the top places that Gen Z and younger millennials, these are the folks in your wheelhouse as employees, this is where they're looking. So think about where you're looking for your employees, and you may need to widen your look, and then you therefore get yourself into a larger employee pool situation. Moving on now, we'll take a look at some of this: attract and recruit. Be mobile enabled. Make sure that the younger employees that you're looking for, Gen Z, younger millennials, they can apply online. Your website is mobilely enabled, and it's not clunky on my phone, because that's, if I'm Gen Z, that's how I live my life, through my telephone. Snackable content versus big ad campaigns. What that refers to is, you know, younger millennials and Gen Z grew up on Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter, and so they're used to quick bites of data, and they don't want to see a big 1-page ad campaign as to why you should work there. Keep it punchy, keep it short, keep it snackable. Easy online application process. Make sure you're going through with IT. Get someone to help you with IT so you have that process. And then as soon as I apply for my job and I hit send, I get a text sent to my phone that says, hey, we've got your application. Someone's going to be in touch. And if I'm a Gen Z kid, that text that I got right away means you're engaged with me, and I'm more likely to show up for an interview along those. And offer what Gen Z wants in the middle there. Of course, it's what a lot of us want: competitive wages. We need to be able to make a living in this day and age. A good boss, and what we're talking about now today in terms of employee culture, that's a good boss. Flexibility for students, for people that have other interests, and now safety, which has always been important, but now it's paramount in importance, that we understand how we're going to keep one another safe and communicate that with each other. Community means within the restaurant, not just teamwork, but a real sense of community that goes on within the 4 walls, and how do you serve your local community there. And of course, inclusion. Do I have a voice at your restaurant? I want to have a voice. If I feel like I have a voice, I'm a hard worker, I'm going to be more likely to stick around and be loyal to you. So a lot to talk about and think about in terms of employee culture in the post-quarantine age, and things may need to change. We wish you the very, very best of luck on this process moving forward, and I would leave you with this thought. With the employee pool getting larger and the number of restaurants shrinking, unfortunately, because of closures, you might be thinking of a short-term money grab, paying less money, demanding more, and so that you can save a little bit of money on labor. That is short-term thinking. This is a golden opportunity right now today to be looking at this employee pool that is growing, and it's going to get bigger, we believe, in August, and to pluck the best of them out and bring them into your new and improved restaurant culture. And you have the potential to walk away from this COVID-19 era in the months to come with a restaurant that was actually better than it was prior to this pandemic. So think about that employee culture piece. I wish you well. I wish you luck. Thank you very much in the new normal out there. Goodbye.